Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I hope everyone is doing well. Okay, so today we're going to go over what a propositional nation is, what it means, and the problems with it. And this kind of is going to tie into the liberal world order video I did, the video on what's happening in the UK, and just topics we've sort of been discussing on this channel. But before we do, you might notice that there is a picture of me on the screen. Okay, so I have a camera now. A couple days ago, the kids went to sleep and I got ready. I did my makeup and they went to sleep early, right? So I was like, oh, and I still had a bunch of energy. So I recorded a bunch of videos. I didn't even go to sleep. I just stayed up all through the night drinking coffee and recording a bunch of videos. Okay, none of those videos worked. It was so bad. So one thing that happened is that I was completely blurry and breaking up the entire time. The other thing that happened is when I went off screen to put videos up, the way that StreamYard works is that you have to hit share screen, you go up, you click on the thing that you want, then you have to add it to the stage. What you're looking at now is the stage, but it's just I made a background to be able to actually do anything on that page, like push play on a YouTube video or to scroll to read the article or even really see it because it's tiny on my screen, you have to go back to the tab. So you go back to the tab and that's where you're doing everything while it's still recording on this screen that you're looking at now. Well, when I would do that, it froze my entire video. So you could hear my voice, but my video just froze. And so it wasn't playing the video while I was on the other screen. So that messed everything up. The video was completely terrible. So I looked into that. I had to like chat GPT this and it had me do an internet test and my internet isn't capable. Long story short, my internet is not capable of actually doing videos. And it actually made all the video that I was playing really blurry too, like the YouTube videos, just me being on the camera. So, because it was just too much uploading. So I have to figure out what other companies offer better internet, et cetera, in my area before I can actually go on camera. So, but most people, because I can see the analytics behind the scenes, most people, when they click on my videos, they're interested, they click on them, but they only stay for 30 seconds or less than a minute or sometimes less than two and I think it's because I'm not on screen. Okay, so until I can get that figured out, I made this background. So I took the videos that were really blurry. I downloaded a couple of them anyway, and then I went through and I picked frames out of them and I put them in Canva and I put them on this background that I normally use, and then I put this background in StreamYard. I also made so I made two backgrounds. Let me show you. So here's another one. You could see that it's really blurry. I changed my outfit on the same day because I didn't want to look like I was recording videos for days and wearing the same thing. So here I'm wearing a white shirt. Okay, now I also made profile pics. So you can see here. Now to do my profile like this, how I was, where it had my logo, I have to put my original background without my picture on it so that that just goes there. I made this profile from a frame of the video, this profile pic, and then I made this one. Okay, so this is what I look like. Okay, I don't know how to, I only have 60 subscribers. I literally launched my channel in January, so I'm still learning, and apparently I thought I was doing pretty good, but apparently not. So epic fail. Today we're gonna go with this one, but I'm not gonna have it on screen most of the time that the whole thing is crazy. Okay, so there I am. Now, let's get to the topic at hand. And I don't know, maybe this is dumb and people won't like it, but we'll see. We'll see if me having at least a picture on the screen gets people to stay longer. Okay, So today we are going to go over what a propositional state is, or the idea of a propositional nation is another way to say it, and the problems that it's causing. So I have a couple of articles and I have a longer video we're going to watch of Auron MacIntyre, and I have a couple of smaller videos. So might be broken up into two series depending on how long it ends up. For some reason, reading articles takes like an hour per article for some reason. Still unfor sure why that is. Okay, so this is called The Myth of the Propositional Nation from the American Reformer. I have no idea who these people are. I just did a Google search trying to find information about this to pull up, and so this is what I found. In his acceptance speech at the Republican National Convention last week, Vice Presidential nominee J.D. Vance touched on a growing political dispute. He maintained that America is not just an idea, it is a group of people with a shared history and a common future. In short, it is a nation. Vance was implicitly targeting the popular idea that America is a proposition nation. So, that's another subject we discussed, is what a nation state is. Okay, so we went over that in the last video, and this is tying into that. You know how I like to do my videos? I like to build ladders where we're tying this to this to this so that you can see how things connect and you can get ideas about a topic from more than one level, I guess, more than one dimension. Michael Anton has described this as the claim that America can be summarized in a few words and phrases: equality, liberty, proposition. America is an idea, constitution, and nation of immigrants. Upholding abstract ideas simply is what matters to the health of the United States. In Joe Biden's address immediately following his withdrawal from the 2024 presidential election, he also described America as an idea. On the surface, the term proposition nation seems like a cheap rhetorical shot taken at one's political opponents, much like how neoconservative can be used sloppily, painting one's political enemies as believers in a propositional state seems like an overly broad term that is functionally meaningless. Who actually thinks that America can be reduced to ideas alone? But the propositional nation claim is not hyperbole. It is, in fact, an apt description of high-profile members on both the establishment left and right talk about America. In a 2021 message before Congress, President Biden stated, "America is an idea, the most unique idea in history. We are created, all of us equal. It's who we are, and we cannot walk away from that principle and, in fact, say we're dealing with the American idea." Meanwhile, in his book, Them, Why We Hate Each Other and How to Heal, former U.S. Senator Ben Sasse wrote that America is an idea, it is a creed. The American idea is a commitment to the universal dignity of persons everywhere. According to proponents of the proposition nation, since America can be described by abstract political principles alone, anyone in the world can become an American in all but legal status. Citizenship simply becomes a mental checklist of key terms and phrases rather than assimilating into a complete way of life, a way of the mind that lacks any connection to the thick web of social bonds that human beings create by nature. On this account, the essence of America quickly becomes a cardboard cutout version of a nation. Rather than cultivating a home for yourself and your family, America is instead about attaining a pure and undiluted idea of individual freedom. In this retelling of the American myth, since all men are equal in nearly every way imaginable, then no one is better than anyone else. An implication of this unshakable belief in this leveling equality is one that all people are therefore entitled to the political franchise. Each person should be allowed to seize their own destiny, to make use of their liberties and talents as they see fit, and define and pursue their own happiness however they see it, without moral constraint or interference from others. Or, as the U.S. Army's former marketing slogan put it, you are free to be all you can be. Hey guys, so it's that time where I need to ask you to subscribe to the channel. And if you're already subscribed, just hit the like, please. If you don't do this, I will be abducted by aliens. Thanks! The American founding heritage. The founders of America did not think that the new nation could be reduced to a political theory or an aspirational cliche. To a man, they would have utterly rejected the two-dimensional interpretation of their political principles that is influential on both the left and the right today. They did not understand America to be a propositional nation and thus an open invitation from the world's poor, tired, and huddled masses in order to live their best life now. Though oft quoted, John Jay's sentiments from Federalist 2 are nevertheless a key summary of the founders' thoughts on the matter. That is, the people's character, that upholds the form. With equal pleasure, I have often taken notice that Providence has been pleased to give this one connected country to one united people, a people descended from the same ancestors, speaking the same language, professing the same religion, attached to the same principles of government, very similar in their manners and customs, and who, by their joint counsels, arms, and efforts, fighting side by side through a long and bloody war, have nobly established general liberty and independence. Jay called attention to the myriad commonalities that formed the bedrock on which the founders made their case for revolution. Their arguments for breaking away from Great Britain rested on the truth that the colonists were politically one people. The revolution could have never been undertaken absent the countless ties that bound the colonists together. In his 1796 farewell address, George Washington reiterated Jay's account of the unity shared among the people of the young nation. With the slightest shades of difference, you have the same religion, manners, habits, and political principles. You have in common cause fought and triumphed together. The independence and liberty you possess are the work of joint councils and joint efforts, of common dangers, suffering, and successes. Even James Madison, often extolled in our times for his Enlightenment pluralist political thought, warned his fellow Americans in Federalist 14 that in order for a union of Republican states to succeed, Americans must remember their common origins and shared experiences. Hearken not to the unnatural voice which tells you that the people of America, knit together as they are by so many cords of affection, can no longer live together as members of the same family, can no longer continue the mutual guardians of their mutual happiness, can no longer be fellow citizens of one great, respectable, and flourishing empire. Hearken not to the voice which petulantly tells you that the form of government recommended for your adoption is a novelty in the political world, that it has never yet had a place in the theories of the wildest projectors, that it rashly attempts what is impossible to accomplish. No, my countrymen, shut your ears against this unhallowed language. Shut your hearts against the poison which it conveys. The kindred blood which flows in the veins of American citizens, mingled with the blood they have shed in defense of their sacred rights, consecrate their union, and excite horror at the idea of their becoming aliens, rivals, and enemies. For Madison, it was the kindred and the mingled blood of the colonists that cemented their political union. The founders emphasized these themes, especially when it came to the subject of immigration. In a critique of Thomas Jefferson's liberal proposal for granting citizenship, Alexander Hamilton anonymously wrote in the New York Evening Post, "The safety of a republic depends essentially on the energy of a common nation sentiment, on a uniformity of principles and habits, on the exemption of the citizens from foreign bias and prejudice, and on that love of country which will almost invariably be found to be closely connected with birth, education, and family." Even from the Declaration of Independence itself, often cited as the document proving propositional nationhood, chided America's British brethren for being deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. In other words, principles of justice and ties of blood attest to the same truths. The particular claims of political justice made in the Declaration were intrinsically linked to the one people who dissolved the political bands that had formerly connected Americans and the British. Without a people of certain character, abstract political principles, however true theoretically, would never have been realized. A particular people with universal and particular principles. The American founders saw the country as a blend or hybrid, a particular people who appealed to political principles that were partly universal and partly based on the colonists' historical circumstances as Anglo-Protestants. To borrow Aristotelian categories, while the form was the political theory, the matter was the particular people who shared a common life, traditions of self-government, the Christian religion, unspoken customs and mores, and shared loves and affections. As Thomas Jefferson makes it clear in his 1774 tract, A Summary View of the Rights of British America, the colonists based much of their argument on securing the rights they were due as Englishmen. But as an inevitable break with the British drew near, they eventually appealed to natural principles of justice and the right to vindicate a long-standing historical tradition of self-government that took a particular English-American form, representation, bicameral legislatures, a preference for the common good, and legal protection of historic rights and liberties. In other words, the Americans' appeal to natural rights was in addition to their previous appeal to tradition, not in place of it. They simply went one step deeper to the very ground of that tradition itself, arguing that English constitutional law was, in essence, also just according to natural and divine law, something not even all English jurists and philosophers agreed with. This held true even after the Americans rejected certain English parliamentary forms and structures of government. The American colonists appealed to universal principles, both natural and divine, in their separation from the British and the founding of America. Their appeal to political principles itself was not novel but very ancient. Aristotle made it clear that the political virtue that enabled correct judgment and moral action was prudence. Prudence, as an intellectual virtue, is a mean between two vicious extremes, deficiency and excess. Intellectually, the virtuous mean is an orthos logos, a right reckoning account, sometimes translated as right reason, that allows a person to discern the right thing to do in specific circumstances and to do so at the right time, in the right way, for the right motive, and for the right ends. Thus, by their nature, prudential judgments are both universal and particular. They draw upon universal principles such as justice and right, but always for the purpose of applying them in particular and often unrepeatable circumstances. Since prudence is the crowning virtue of the political statesman, all good statecraft is thus simultaneously universal and particular. A purely universal politics results in a city in speech and idealistic utopia unable to be realized. A purely pragmatic politics results in an unjust city and the city of pigs fit only for men's baser appetites. Therefore, principles alone, though important to the revolutionary cause, were never a sufficient foundation on which to achieve the proper conditions of true liberty. David Azered of Hillsdale College best captures the American synthesis when he writes, America, in other words, is both particular and universal. We are particular in our own way, just as Lithuania and Laos are particular in their own ways. But we are exceptional in making certain universal ideals constitutive component of our national identity. Many countries today affirm these ideals too, but only we make them an inextricable part of who we are. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead. This article will be linked below. So I'm going to skip ahead to the dangers of propositionalism. As mentioned above, in several places, the idea of the propositional nation has helped introduce key errors into our politics. With the help of Carson Holloway's chapter in Up from Conservatism, we will shed further light on these problems. The propositional nation claim Holloway contends, elevates adherence to abstract principles at the expense of loyalty to our nation and to our fellow citizens. This has led to a disregard of the common good of Americans in favor of greasing the wheels of globalism. As a result, middle America has been hollowed out, wages have been driven down, and countless families have been dispossessed through a doctrine of economic Hegelianism that conveniently had nothing to do with the choices made by our political class. Casually disregarding the rights of citizenship of their own countrymen, the ruling class has imported a new caste of service workers from other nations, which has sowed disunion and dissension among the white working class. Meanwhile, and I think also the black working class are not happy either. And I've always said this and maintained this. Black Americans were here when this nation became a nation, when it was declared to be a nation, and when it started, they are just as much Americans, or they're just as much heritage Americans as the white European Americans that were here also at that time. And there were also some Hispanic people too. So, some of them, their families have been here just as long, and a lot of them are also feel the same way. Okay, where was I? Meanwhile, among the cosmopolitan class, there's been an increase in dual citizenship, which divides one's loyalty between America and other nations, and a general disdain of the strong gods of patriotism, nationalism, and loyal to one's own people that are pivotal for any nation to have long-term success. Holloway maintains that the proposition nation claim has also produced a reflexive moralism that gives short shrift to the preconditions of Republican government. Since America can be reduced to ideas simply, this has helped boost the neoconservative project of exporting democracy all over the world. It grossly understates the necessary habits of character that a citizenry must possess for self-governance to operate, confusing the simple act of voting with the preconditions of republicanism itself. It also disarms America in the face of our allies and enemies, none of whom have to play by our rules and take care of their own people above all other considerations. Also, as one of us recently noted at American Reformer, it has also undermined our nation's immigration policy. The world is, after all, full of over 7 billion potential Americans. Originally following the political covenantal tradition, citizenship was automatically conferred upon the children of citizens, not requiring their voluntary consent. Immigrants, according to the Nationalization Act of 1790, had to be ethnically homogeneous with America's British and Western European heritage, and they had to have resided in America for at least 2 years and prove in court that they were a person of good character. That's really good. Why don't we go back to that? Why don't we go back to the National Naturalization Act of 1790? That sounds pretty good. Only then were they allowed to take an oath of allegiance to the Constitution and the nation. These residential, ethnic, and characterological requirements for citizenship, all reflecting America's hearth, home, and heritage, lasted until the radical revision of U.S. immigration law, the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965. Oh, imagine that. That's when Marxism took over our country. Henceforth, and on the basis of anti-discrimination law, immigrants the world over were welcome to America. The only requirement was naturalization oath of allegiance. Finally, the propositional nation argument keeps the total state humming through its implicit view of anthropology. If Americans simply need to be fed the right programming, they are bots that can easily be replaced. As Pavos, I'm not going to try to say that, has noted that the implications of the propositional nation's view of man as a cog in the machine empowers the managers, academics, and consultants who staff major corporations, nonprofits, and the administrative state, who appeal to their expert credentials rather than the consent of the governed, as legitimizing sources of their oligarchic authority, and thus undermine self-government in our federal republic. Our founders instead saw Americans as three-dimensional, flesh and blood human beings with families, homesteads, loyalties, loves, religious needs, and more. If mouthing a few incantations of liberty and equality and rights is all it takes for one to be an American, then we functionally have no nation. Conclusion. In this time of political realignment, the idea of the propositional nation must be jettisoned for the language of hearth and home. At bottom, the propositional nation is part and parcel of the present American regime, where an immoral notion of progress is praised. Homes are merely charging stations where one watches Netflix and PORN and orders DoorDash. One's closest family lives hours away, and Sunday mornings are for playing golf or watching a Sunday morning political show. The propositional nation flows from a sclerotic and deteriorating regime where the people en masse have lost a good deal of the hard-won virtues that once defined the American character. And you could see that today. I mean, like the stuff that's going on with the Charlie Kirk situation and all these people viciously attacking his wife in disgusting and horrific ways. You would be shamed from public life if anybody tried to do stuff like that back in the day. But crucially, we are not yet at a place where this trend is irreversible. We need to bring back the ideas of place, tradition, loyalty, and reputation, grounded, of course, on the political ideals that birthed America. We cannot go back to 1776. We can strive to become a people who value analog life, people who have deep loyalties to family and friends and to their churches, people who work hard for a living and understand that caring about their nation is not worshiping an idol or tossing aside the gospel in favor of xenophobia. Like our forefathers, we should pledge our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor, grounded, of course, on a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence to rebuild our homes, families, communities, and towns. It will take an immense amount of daring, courage, and fortitude, but the future of our nation is worth fighting for. Okay, so I know that that was pretty heady reading, but hopefully you guys could understand what that article was trying to get across, and that it's important that we not fall into these traps that have been foisted on us by people who are, one, don't have our best interests at heart, two, globalist Marxists. Okay, so a lot of the ideas, like I've been saying, there's a lot of stuff that you collect over just living a life, and you'll get a lot of ideas that you believe in and that you think are true. And a lot of those came from like Marxist infiltration, which are like little spells, and you have to get rid of them. You need to understand like what's going on and what those are, and if you even really believe that way, by examining it, because we need to start taking our own side as Americans, not like race or whatever, but just like as Americans, like real Americans. You know what I'm saying? People who love this country, people who've been here, their parents have been here, they built a life here. We need to start looking out for ourselves because nobody else is. But I explained in the last video where there's some hope. Things are shifting. So there's no need to black pill or be super down or whatever, or, things are shifting. The political winds are changing. And that's why I think it's important to know these definitions, to know what people are thinking, etc., so that we can decide for ourselves how we feel about it. Okay, now let's go to... Okay, so I don't know exactly what all of this video I am going to play, but the beginning part was him talking about how Republicans reacted to this meme that was put out, like a meme video, whatever, and it really upset the left, but it also really upset Republicans and the GOP because, of course, we always act not in our best interest. We always like attack each other. It's like it's becoming a really big problem. Not for sure how to address it just yet because I'm still, thinking about it. But let's see what he's got going on here.
I want to contrast that today because this is the big point. Okay. The big point is the way the Republicans reacted to this, as opposed to what the Democrats were doing just a few days.
Okay, and so what this is like it was a political video of people's faces on animals. And in the political video, they put Barack Obama and Michelle Obama on monkeys or whatever. But then there were all these other politicians on also animals. Like, I don't know. So I have no idea if it was meant to be any sort of way, but it was taken that sort of way, right?
Later. So while the Republicans are denouncing Donald Trump as an evil racist, and this video is so offensive, and we absolutely have to denounce it, because ultimately, if we don't fight this, then people will think that we're big meanie heads who don't like black people or something, and then all the things they said about us will be true. Yeah, the Republicans do this stuff, of course. But what do the Democrats do when something much worse happens, far worse happens? How do they treat it? Well, here is a state representative in Texas. His name is Gene Wu. He's the District 137 Texas House of State Representatives. That's his district. And he said this in a recent interview.
Tell people the day the Latino, African American, Asian, and other communities realize that they share the same oppressor is the day we start winning. Because we are the majority in this country now. We have the ability to take over this country and to do what is needed for everyone and to make things fair. But the problem is our communities are divided. They're completely divided.
So this video is amazing for all kinds of reasons. We'll break them down one by one. So the first thing that's amazing here is Gene Wu is an immigrant. He was not born in the United States, as far as I understand. So he is here as a guest. He was supposed to take a pledge of loyalty to the United States. He was supposed to be somebody who was saying he had nothing but good intentions, of good moral character, when he became an American, in theory. But he's not, because he's a paperwork American, right? He doesn't believe in America. He hates America. He hates the people who are in America, the people who made America, the people who founded America. So this is why the propositional nation is a joke. The idea that we can just have somebody in and they'll raise their hand and they'll adopt our values. And no, he walks in the door. He lies. He tells a lie. I don't actually care about this country. I hate this country, but I sure would like to make money. I sure would like to have the benefits of living in a country built by the people I hate. So I'm going to lie about them. And I'm going to lie to them and say, oh, no, I love the country and I want to become a part of it. And boom, the propositional nation is over. It doesn't work anymore. All you have to do is lie. That's it. That's all you have to do is just lie. And it breaks the propositional nation. I promise, I believe in the proposition. No, really, I really do believe in the proposition. Oh, I'm in the country. Haha, turns out I don't. You suck. I'm going to take over your country. I hate you. That's all he has to do. So, great. Amazing. What a way to run a country. What a way to envision your national identity. It completely explodes the minute someone tells a lie. Oh, gee, I wish we could have thought of that one. Man, it's amazing. Like, it's amazing. And people are still telling me, no, this is what America's founded on, man. You got to believe in this. You got to believe in this idea that we cooked up like maybe 100 years ago at most. Like, you got to buy all the progressive propaganda. This is what America was all about. So guys like Gene Wu can come in here and tell you that he hates you and you're stupid and you're racist, and he's going to band together with all the other minorities and take over the country. That's just the American dream, baby. That's the proposition. And if you don't believe that, you're just not an American. Like, this is what we have to put up with. It's insane. It's insane. Now, this guy goes on television and says explicitly, what guys like me and many others have been called woke right for telling you. Okay? And that's ultimately why I love the video, because it's just mask off. People who are lying to you and saying, oh, if you notice that like actually large amounts of immigrants are coming in with ethnic cabals that want to take over the country because they hate white people, well, you're woke. You're woke. You're just like the woke left. You want to play identity politics, don't you? No, man, I just got 2 eyes. I've got ears. I can hear what they say. I know what they're doing. It's obvious. But no, that's not it. It's all Marxism. It's all Marxism or Islam, right? Like that's the new. And again, I've said this many times. I want a Muslim ban. Like I think Islam is stupid. I don't want it in my country. It doesn't belong here. But like, I'm sorry, the idea that there's the Muslim Islam alliance is taking over the country. They're our new enemy, and that's why we need a new Cold War and new neocons, and we've got to invade everybody, and we need to because we've got an alliance between the Marxists and the Islamists. No.
Okay, so what he's talking about here is there has been a weird push on the right to label other people who've just, and this is all new. So these people have been on the right like this whole time, like Auron has, and ever since Charlie Kirk died, and I think it may have been going on before that, but it really ramped up afterwards. There has been this push of, I guess, what you would call normie Republican people on the right, like influencers, etc., to label everybody to the right of them as woke right now. And this sort of stemmed, I believe, from James Lindsay, like I've talked about in previous videos, where I like James Lindsay. I think he does like incredible work, but I did say like he was being a little weird and hyperbolic on things going on the right, and it all comes from the neocons. So the neocons push this stuff on just regular Republicans. Just like I said, Marxist ideals will get in your brain, well, so will neocon ideals that you don't realize are coming from them. And so there's just been this whole, and like I said, I still need to like gather my thoughts about it, so I'm kind of just doing like an overview. But that's sort of what he's talking about, or what he's expressing in this video, is that's been going on. And so because most people on the right were not happy with neocons, like most of us were wanting something new because the party doesn't really work for us. And that's why Donald Trump coming on the scene was so electric, because he was supposed to be fighting the what's called the uniparty and the establishment, and that's why it became such a big thing. And so now that we're still dealing with all that, and Trump's going to go away at some point, and people on the right are expressing themselves about certain issues, now they're being labeled woke right. So, and that in and of itself, I think there's something going on with all that. Like I said, I still need to analyze stuff. Anyway, so that's sort of what he's expressing himself there. And if you're like if you were a listener of his and a follower of his, you would know that.
No, garbage, dumb. I'm sorry. And guys who go out there and tell you everything about leftism it's all Marxism. It's not anti-white hatred. It's not that they hate white people. It's not a vicious ethnic attack. It's Marxism. No, it's all lies. It's all garbage. You know why? Because you didn't hear a single bit of Marxism in that statement. That guy wasn't talking about the labor theory of value. He wasn't talking about seizing the means of production. He doesn't give a crap about the socialist revolution. No, don't get me wrong. I'm sure the guy probably has Marxist redistributionist politics. Like, I'm sure there's some Marxism in there. I'm sure that most of the time, he dresses up his anti-white hatred in the garb of political ideology. Oh, I don't hate white people. I'm just Marxist. We're not redistributing money from white people to minorities to buy their votes. Well, we believe in the socialist struggle. Whatever. Like, I'm sure he says that, right? But it's naked and obvious here. It is naked and obvious. Hey, we can take over America from white people if we just band together with all the other minorities. If we recognize that all the other immigrants, we outnumber the white people now, we can band together and take over the country. If we just realize that we all have the same oppressor, now there's your little Marxism. There you go. It's oppressor, oppressed. But if we recognize we all have the same enemy, white people in America, we can get together and take over. The only reason we haven't gotten together and won yet is because we're busy fighting each other. And once we get rid of that, once we ban our little ethnic coalition together and stop fighting each other, we can take America away from all those white people. He's just saying it out loud. There's no hesitation. There's no shame. There is zero reason to ultimately pretend like he's just going to say the plan. Because there's enough people in the U.S. now who aren't heritage Americans, and if we just get them all together, we can take over, and there's nothing you can do. Now, again, this is rhetoric that was considered like an alt-right conspiracy theory 5 years ago. Like if you went around saying that this was, their plan, and that this was what was going on, and that the whole time, and this is the motivation, you'd be treated as some kind of insane, alt-right crazy person, right? Except no, that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. Like that was exactly the plan the whole time. And we told you, and we were called racist, and we were called woke, and we were called all of these names by idiots because they didn't want to address the problem. Sorry, the problem here is not Marxism. Yes, they use it as an ideological cudgel. They use the rhetoric. But what this guy's talking about is a race war. He wants a race war. And he wants it against white people. And he's saying so. If we can get all the non-white people together, we can take the country over from the white people. That's what he's saying. And so now we have to have these conversations. I'm sorry. When this is being announced, we have to have these conversations. We can't play pretend anymore. We can't play we don't know. We didn't see it coming. Oh boy, if we just...
That's why I said earlier that we have to take our own side. We have to start thinking logically. We have to start putting things together. We have to start figuring out what's going on. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just, we have to.
Put our head in the sand a little longer. That'll solve the problem. The man is announcing openly, yes, our plan is to bind all the non-white people together because now we're the majority and we're going to take over the country from the white people who are oppressing us. Like, not hiding the ball. So now we have to talk about things that matter. I'm sorry. And it's going to offend some people, and more people are going to call me racist or woke or whatever, and I don't care. Because we have to have this discussion, and I love my country more than I'm worried about mean names. So we need to talk about demographic security. We need to talk about the fact that ethnic percentages matter. That where immigrants come from, if they come from at all, anywhere, like if we're even having immigration, which I think we should have a moratorium on. But sorry, like you have to notice that when guys like this, who are born in China, I'm pretty sure, when guys like this announce that he is building purposely a non-white coalition to take over the country from white people, like we have to start noticing where people come from. We have to notice that they're not loyal to the country, that they love their former country and people with their skin color, or even just other skin colors that aren't white, more than they love the country. That their goal to come into the country was to take it over. And that allowing people like this, especially foreign-born people, to come in and say, oh, I'm going to run for office and I'm going to make your laws, is insane. It's insane. We need generational citizenship. We need a ban on anyone who was born in a foreign country from serving in any position in the United States. We have it for president. You have to be born a U.S. citizen to be president. We need it for everything. This guy's a Texas state representative. That's the good news. Like, he's not, in Congress or the Senate of the United States. But that doesn't mean he's not echoing a position that a lot of people who are in those positions hold. Like,
I sped it up a little bit.
he has the same idea they have. He's just dumb enough to say it out loud to a camera. But it's the same plan. It's the same plan. And guess what? You could barely get Republicans to denounce this. Thank you, by the way. I believe Chip Roy and Mike Lee, like there were a few, and good job, right? Good for you. Ted Cruz tried to denounce it, but he said, this is bigotry. Of what kind, Ted? What do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? What kind of bigotry do we have here? So we have an obvious situation where this guy is an anti-white racist, he's an anti-white bigot, and barely can get a handful of Republicans to denounce the guy. Democrats don't care. They just don't care. Like, they're not gonna make a news cycle about this. This isn't gonna be on MSNBC. It's not gonna be, 14 days on CNN. Have you denounced Gene Wu? Have you denounced the anti-white bias, the bigotry of Gene Wu? Is the Texas legislature going to strip this guy of his committee assignments, his seat? Do they have any spine at all? Can they even pretend to care that this guy hates white people and is obviously fomenting an actual race war? Like, I'm not putting words in his mouth here. He says specifically, I want all the other races to get together against white people. Like, that's his plan. And like, unapologetically. He's like, yes, obviously that's what we're doing. Of course that's what we're doing. Like, it's so obvious, I'll just announce it. What, you couldn't see it before? It's incredible that you can't seem to find more than a handful of Republicans to make a big deal about this, and of course, like, no Democrats. But they're all losing their minds over Trump reposting a video someone else edited that wasn't even racist. Like, they don't care about racism, and neither should you. The charge should be nothing to you. Oh, you're a racist. Whatever, I don't care. Because this is what racism really looks like. Like, this is what actual racism, the term is supposed to look like. But I don't even bother using the term at this point, because racism doesn't mean anything. If I want to point out, I try to use anti-white bigotry when it's against white people, because racism is just an amorphous thing that only matters when Democrats apply it. Republicans can't cancel someone for being racist, obviously. Like, this guy is just saying his plan to team up against white people, and he doesn't care. Because what are you going to do? Call him a racist? It doesn't mean anything to him. The charge doesn't mean anything coming from you. You're not going to cancel him. It has no cultural power. The media is not going to cover it. They're not going to destroy his life the way they would in.
They've done a really good job of saying, if you are not white, then you can't be racist. So that's another thing they've trained into people's brains. So you'll hear people say that. They'll say, if you are a minority, you can't be racist, because the whole goal is to foment hate against white people. So anything that they do that's hateful against white people is fine, because that's technically not racism, because they can't be racist.
Anyone else? They will spend an entire news cycle or a couple news cycles, couple days on Donald Trump with a video, but nothing about this. So we have to have the discussion. Like, people will say, oh, why are you worried about white people becoming a minority in the United States? It's fine. We treat minorities well. Actually, you know why we treat minorities well? Because Americans made up America. Because that's how we treat minorities. That's not how people from other countries treat minorities. And when you import minorities from other countries into your country and they become the majority, guess what? They start talking like Gene Wu. Because he doesn't have your Western Christian understanding of how to treat a minority. He treats a minority the way the Chinese treat a minority. He puts them in jail. Right? He doesn't care. He crushes them. He bans them from political authority. Doesn't matter. They're not Chinese. So if you become a minority in a country that only treated minorities well because they were a bunch of Anglo-Christians who had that belief system, well, guess what? You don't get that anymore. You get more of a third world understanding of how to treat a minority, which is kill them, oppress them, take their stuff, put them in jail, strip them of their rights. Because whatever, they're not like us. That's it. That's all he's got, right? So yeah, I guess I don't know how videos like this can circulate and not be the most important thing anyone has seen. Can't be like what is on everyone's lips. This guy is Radio Rwandoing. Like he's like, we got to take out the whites. That's what he is saying. Like, we got to crush them. We need to band together and get rid of them. And that's the entire Democratic Party, by the way. Leftism, progressivism in the United States, but generally around the world, but especially in the United States, it's not an ideology, man. Like, it's not about their socialism or their communism or whatever. It's not about Marx. It's not about Engels. It's not about Trotsky even. It's not about Lenin or Stalin. It's about hating white people. That's what the Democratic Party exists to do. It's the party of non-whites with the explicit purpose of hurting white people, taking their stuff, making them a minority, making putting them in a closet, making them marginalized. Like, that's the whole purpose of the Democratic Party. How do you think you get the kids people in the same party with radical Islamists? How do you get them to occupy the same space? How do you get blacks and Asians together, even though, for instance, the Stop Asian Hate movement had to be shut down because they figured out that it was mainly black people beating up Asians? How do you get two groups that are otherwise constantly doing violence to each other? Well, really one group doing violence together. How do you get those two groups together and get them to work together in the same political coalition? You just make sure they hate white people enough. That's it. That's the glue that holds them together. It's not that Asian people are especially communistic. It's not that black people are especially socialist. It's that if you tell them their enemy is a white person, they'll work together and ignore their differences. It's not that radical Islamists love trans kids. And it's not that people who are trans, just can't wait to have a neighbor who believes in Sharia law. It's that if you tell them both that getting rid of white Christian Americans is the goal, they'll band together. That's it. That's the glue. It's just anti-white politics. It's just an anti-white coalition. The ideology is secondary. They hate you first, and then they find an ideological reason to band together. That's the order of operations. So when a guy like this announces that that's the plan, plain and simple, with no ideological obfuscation, it's time to believe him and to act accordingly. We have to shut immigration down. We need to make it so that only natural-born Americans can run for office. And we need 3-generation citizenship if anyone is to immigrate. Immigration moratorium, and once it's over, if you want to become an American, you can't. Neither can your child, but your grandchild can be an American. They could even run for office. But I need to see you living in this country for years, generations, being successful, not being on the public dole. Why is a single immigrant eligible for any kind of welfare, any kind of assistance? They shouldn't be. They're not supposed to be a financial burden. That's actually part of the screening process. But we just keep pushing this idea that anyone can come in, raise their hand, be a propositional American. No. Paperwork Americans like Gene Wu will destroy this country. And he explicitly explains that's the point. That's the point. That's why he's here, to get rid of white Americans. He just says it. We're all going to band together and we're going to take over the country. There's more of us now than there are of them. They were too stupid and let us in. And in case you think he's the first guy to make this claim, remember this video? I think we talked about it, did a show on it previously, but I'm going to play it again just because it drives the point home. This is Wajat Ali or something like that, however you pronounce his name. He's from the UK in theory, but he's actually from, I think, India or Pakistan, and came to the United States, immediately started writing for, I believe, the New York Times, and announced stuff like this.
You have lost. You lost. The mistake that you made is you let us in the first place. See, that's the thing with brown people. I'm going to say this as a brown person. There's a lot of us. A lot. There's 1.2 billion in India. There's more than 200 million in Pakistan. There's 170 million in Bangladesh. Those are just the people there. I'm even talking about the folks who are expats or immigrants. There's a bunch of us. And we breed. We're a breeding people. And the problem is you let us in 1965. There were a few of us beforehand. But once you let one of us in, you know what happens with brown folks? Our grandmother comes, our grandfather comes, our uncle comes, our aunt comes, our cousin comes, our second cousin comes, our third cousin comes. Then we have kids, a bunch of kids. And then guess what? Some white women, the Western civilization women, the pure women, the American women, quote unquote, the Rust Belt women, the real women, they like some of us brown folks. We don't take them.
So again, just stating out loud, yeah, we're here to take over the country from you. There's a lot of us. And once you let us in, we'll just make more of us or we'll bring our family over. And the whole point is to make you irrelevant, to take the country from you. That's why we're here. Now, I'm sure he'd say it's a joke or it's in jest, it's sarcastic. No, it's not. No, that's just a cover for him doing what he actually wants to do, saying what he really says, saying what he actually believes. How many times do we need this explained to us directly? How many times do we need the left to tell you verbatim exactly what they plan to do before we believe that's actually what they're doing? How many times can a guy like James Lindsay or these guys, Constantine Kiss, how many times can these guys run around and call people woke for pointing out the exact plan that is being announced by the left without hesitation? I don't know, man. I'm so fed up with this. I'm so tired of having to argue with people about the obvious, the thing that is literally being smacked in your face on a regular basis. We've got to shut this down. We have to deport them all. They all have to go home. I don't just need the criminal aliens. They're all criminals that came here illegally, and even the legal immigrants. Gene Wu's a legal immigrant. This guy's a legal immigrant. I don't want him in my country. He's not an American. And neither is Gene Wu. I don't care what kind of paperwork they have. Send them home immediately. At the very least, they lied when they came here. They were malicious. They were liars. They were subversive. We don't need them here. Send them home. Like, I do not understand how anyone can oppose this plan at this point. They all need to go back. Sorry. Every illegal needs to go back. Many of the legals need to go back. Anyone talking like this absolutely has to go back. And we need a moratorium. We have to stop importing people. We have to. On top of that, if we do ever open up immigration again, we get to choose from what countries. And I don't want to hear about it. We need to be picky about who comes in. And even if they do come in from countries we want, we have to tell them 3 generations before you're an American. People ask me all the time, okay, well, Auron, what do we do? What do we do? Where are your solutions? Here are my solutions. I'm laying them out. I'm being explicit. I'm not hiding the ball. This is what has to happen. We have to fix this. All right. I'm sorry to do this to you, but it is the Super Bowl and it is news. Now, ultimately, again, I would probably have skipped this, but it's so tied to everything we're talking about today that I think we have to.
Okay. Well, that was that video. I picked it because, I don't know, a week ago, 2 weeks ago or something, I watched it because I follow him, and I saved it because Propositional Nation was brought up, and I was planning on making a video about the Propositional Nation, because that's sort of what I do. I'm always like taking in, I listen to a lot of people. I listen to a lot of different people, just like a big wide variety. I take things in and then I think, oh, that's interesting. I bet people would want to know more about this topic, like an overview, like a definition, like, you know what I'm saying? So then I will save it. And so I saved that and I put Propositional Nation on the playlist. And for some reason, I'm pretty sure there were other videos, but I didn't end up putting them in the propositional thing. I've got to go through my watch later. I think a bunch of stuff is in my watch later, but so that was the only one I had. But anyway, that was sort of the topic of why propositional nations can be so destructive. Now, you might be thinking he's being hyperbolic. That was just one dude, whatever. But as you could see from my last video, they're having very big issues in Europe, which are way further down the line than we are, with their immigration population, with their immigrant population. And here is just a reminder of that. So okay, so Tommy Robinson is in the United States, apparently. And I just saw this today. I have not watched this Tim Cast episode, but I saw this on Twitter. This keeps happening to me. Every time I make a video, and I'm editing it, because the video that I made on, what was it called? My last video, it's gonna be, it hasn't technically posted yet because you're supposed to let it set in YouTube. You're supposed to schedule it and let it set for at least 24 hours. So it's posting tomorrow. But then this video won't be out tomorrow. This video will be out once I'm done editing it. But this keeps happening to me. I will make a video and then I go on my YouTube afterwards or my Twitter or whatever, and people are talking about the exact same thing I was in my video, but my video won't be out because I literally just recorded it. And I'm like, so it's just this funny thing I started noticing. So I recorded my last video. Today is Friday. I recorded my last video on Wednesday, and I just got it all finished editing, and the description wrote up, and the thumbnail made, and the yada yada yada. And then I I loaded it up today and scheduled it for Saturday. So anyway. And it's not going to be like Provoked might be my last video by now, but that's just like I'm reading. That's just the book club. I mean, my last main video. So Tommy Robinson was on Timcast, and he mentions, in this clip anyway, the R-word gang inquiry and the issues not the inquiry, but what was going on with that whole thing that needed to have an inquiry about. And so, and fair warning, this is going to be a little rough. So let's listen to it.
What you've seen is men in Minnesota. What you've seen is men in Minnesota. You know, the little thing you've seen with the Somalians.
Okay, same exact thing I said, that the exact same thing going on with the fraud in Somalia is what was going on in Britain, to where they just allowed this to happen. This horrific thing to just happen so they weren't called racist.
Well, I've watched this my whole life, yeah? The inability to tackle crimes from a certain community in the town, kid gloves for every other community, iron fists for every other community, but kid gloves for the Islamic community. So I've seen lots of problems. I started talking about them in 2009. I formed a street protest movement called the English Defence League. We were pretty lively, I'm not going to lie.
Lively.
Lively is one word. You have to remember at that time, you know, we all now talk about grooming. You've heard about grooming gangs?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Grooming gangs is rape jihad. They're not grooming gangs. Grooming is something you do to a dog when you groom it. We're talking about young children being kidnapped, prostituted, raped and murdered in every town and city across the UK that has an Islamic community. And we're talking about a conspiracy of silence from police leaders, religious leaders and political leaders who all knew it was happening but let it happen, because rather than offending the Islamic community, or how dare they be deemed racist? So police officers didn't want to be called racist. So rather than be called racist, they literally sacrificed a generation of Britain's daughters. I came along in 2009, started making a hell of a lot of noise with a hell of a lot of brave people who took to the streets with us. We took to our streets in our thousands and tens of thousands at a time, but we were pretty aggressive on the streets. We had to be. It was never going to be female school teachers or nurses that stood up.
And they have prosecuted and persecuted you just over and over and over again. These stories are crazy. You know, I remember that story where you came out of prison gaunt with a beard. They were denying you food. You were in solitary confinement.
Okay, so just wanted to give you guys a reminder that I'm not the only one who's saying that. And I haven't even listened to Tommy Robinson in years. I don't even remember the last time I've seen him. Okay, now I want to go to... Okay, so this is Carl Benjamin. I played an excerpt from his show the other day on my last video about what's going on in Europe and Britain. And so this is from his Akkad Daily. So he has an Akkad, Sargon of Akkad Daily, where he does shorter videos. And so I'll link that below. I'll link this video below. Everything will be... Auron's channel and video will be in the description. This will be in the description. All the articles will be in the description. And even the X post will be in the description. I always put everything in the description. So let's see what he has to say.
So the Europeans appear to be going absolutely bonkers. In Germany, they've decided to launch a nationwide operation against online hate speech. Oh, really? This has become a bit of a problem, apparently. 170 operations are planned and coordinated by the federal police. The suspects are accused of incitement to hatred, insulting politicians, among other things. The investigations focus on far-right statements made online. Many cases also involve criminal insults against politicians, with fewer cases concerning religious extremists or far-left posting. No kidding! It's because they know that people are like, yeah, I think I've had enough of the left-wing globalist order. I've just had enough of it. This apparently Herbert Rule, the Interior Minister of North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany's most popular state, said it's important that perpetrators are uncovered. Digital arsonists must not be allowed to hide behind their phones or computers. Digital arsonists. How dare they have an opinion different to ours? How dare they not respect their elected politicians in the appropriate way? I mean, these people are mental, right? I lived in Germany for 8 years, and lots of German friends went to the German community loads and loads of times, like the various different ones, lots of little villages, lots of cities. And I tell you what, like, I really like the Germans, but if there's one thing you don't want them in charge of, it's a country. How Germany is prosecuting online trolls. They're fighting hate speech on the internet. Oh, brilliant. That's just great. So they have their dozens of police teams across Germany raided homes before dawn. This sounds like Germany is under occupation by, dare I say, some kind of totalitarian government. I mean, it honestly sounds like they're being ruled by communists. This is the kind of thing that George Orwell was parodying in 1984. This is mental. The state police weren't looking for drugs or guns. They were looking for people suspected of posting hate speech online. That doesn't sound redeeming at all. Like, that sounds terrible. Like, no, if they were going after drugs or guns, I could at least be like, oh yeah, get the illegal material off the streets. No, we're annoyed at German citizens, German people, saying things we don't like to hear. That's mad, isn't it? And this is the typical Euro attitude you get. The German constitution protects free speech, but not hate speech. What's the difference? German law prohibits speech that could incite hatred or is deemed insulting. Notice how woolly that is. Perpetrators are sometimes surprised to learn that what they post online is illegal, according to one of the state prosecutors tasked with policing Germany's robust hate speech laws. They don't think it was illegal, and they say, no, that's my free speech. And he replies, and we say, no, you have free speech as well, but it also has its limits, as in, whatever it is we don't like is hate speech, whatever it is we don't care about is your free speech. You don't even know where that line is. This is a form of oppression. German people are being oppressed by the fucking government. Right, that's what this is. And just to be clear, I know because I live in Britain and we're being oppressed by our fucking government. This is how I know what's happening to you. This is how I know what it looks like, because we live under this sword of Damocles as well. And at the moment, Germany's in third place for number of people.
So I will be making a video soon. I'm got it working out in my brain about the censorship laws that have been passed in England, well, the European Union, and how they're planning on using it against America, and they're going to use it in our upcoming elections for the next presidential campaign. And they're basically going to fine into oblivion to bankrupt our social media companies if they don't censor what they tell them to in the European Union, which means if you are on the right, you're going to be censored. Everyone on the right is going to be censored, and they're going to do this at the start of election time when that starts getting ramped up, and they're going to employ all these fines that will literally bankrupt the social media companies if they don't step in line with the EU. So the EU has got this whole thing planned, and you want to know who else is behind it? Hillary Clinton. Yep. And so there's this whole apparatus that they've been putting into place to do this, to go after the right in the elections, and it's like a whole plan. And so I am planning on making a video about that soon.
Arrested for online social media posts, but this was from, I think it was 2024. So I expect that to go significantly up given this. Like, this is just mental. It's just mental. The fact that in Germany you are a completely controlled citizen. Honestly, I don't know how you can take it to our German friends. In the US, of course, they have the First Amendment, but in Germany, authorities are prosecuting online trolls. Because this is what this is about, right? This is about you being put under the heel of an internationalist regime that is intent on privileging foreigners over you. And you being far-right hate speechy means that you're insulting the foreigners, and you insulting the government is insulting the people who are protecting the foreigners. And so what they're doing is they're defending the entire regime that is doing this to you. Like, this is mad. Absolutely mad. German authorities are prosecuting online trolls in an effort to protect
So the reason why he's bringing up the foreigners, because you might not realize what he's trying to say, because that's the hate speech that's being prosecuted, right? That they're going after, is if you're complaining that the foreigners are destroying your country, destroying your city, R-wording your children, beating your children up, taking all of the resources, making everything expensive, etc., etc. So if you start complaining about that, then that's considered hate speech. That's what they're going after.
Discourse and democracy. I mean, it just doesn't wash anymore, right? Oh, we're protecting democracy from who? Germans, who have opinions on the way that their elected officials have been running the country. I mean, it doesn't sound like there's anything more democratic than people having opinions on their own elected officials. But their elected officials have decided, we can just lock them up. We can just put them in jail for the things that they say. I mean, Germany is obviously worse than most. It can be a crime to publicly insult someone in Germany, and the punishment is even worse if the insults are posted online because they stick around forever. Say the guy responsible for prosecuting or persecuting you, right? The reader can't distinguish whether you just invented this or reposted it. It's the same for us. So we're going to come for you. And of course, it could well be, I mean, in most cases, it's a fine, but it can include jail time. You can go to jail in Germany, just like in Britain, for things that you say. The application of Germany's decades-old speech laws was strengthened after its darkest chapter. I assume he's referring to the Merkel government, and then was accelerated online after an assassination of a politician fueled by the internet sent shockwaves through the country. Walter Lübeck went viral after he defended Chancellor Merkel's progressive immigration policy. People with a very right worldview started hating him on the internet. They incited people to kill him, and that went on for about 4 years, and he was fatally shot in the head. Well, I mean, this goes both ways, doesn't it? It's not like there haven't been other politicians who have been shot for not having progressive views. But anyway, moving on. You get other lunatics like Germany's Chancellor Merz, who is just an absolute mental. He's called for an end to widespread anonymity on the internet, saying users should post under their real names. Quote, I want to see real names on the internet. I want to know who's speaking. That sounds like he's going to try and persecute you. That sounds like some sort of tin pot dictator who's going mad with power and is unhappy that there are people in his dictatorship who are able to speak without his permission. Anything that you guys do happens without my consent, says German Chancellor Merz. And I don't have to tolerate that. I have the machinery of government, and therefore I control the army, the armed forces, the police, the whatever federal bloody police they have. I'm going to use them to come after you, is what he says. In politics, we engage in debates in society using our real names and without visors. I expect the same from everyone else who critically examines our country and our society. Oh yeah, have you banned the burqa yet? I don't think you have you? Anyway, the point being... he doesn't want to hear your opinions. And the laws are so tightly circumscribed that already, if you say something sufficiently right-wing, they can just, as we saw previously, arbitrarily detain you and call it hate speech. You think that's your free speech, but we say no. We have decided that's outside of the limits of your free speech. And now I want to know who you are so I can arrest you. This is insane. This is such an unfair, loaded thing. That it literally is the kind of thing I would expect in a dictatorship where it's just like you don't know what's safe to say. You just can't know because they don't have to give you a firm line and they can just change it at any time, and they don't in any way respect your right to have your own opinion. As far as they're concerned, your right comes from them. And as soon as they decide they don't like what you've said, that right ends and you just don't know. And they're like, yeah, no, you're not going to have online anonymity. Because liberal democracy was at risk. Fucking hell, man. Liberal democracy sounds like a horrific tyranny when Germans are in control of it. So, you know, I'm not sure I'm so committed to liberal democracy as interpreted by a German. If I were a German, I'd be like, guys, we're fucked. What are we going to do about this? Like, holy shit. And notice that he's like, yeah, do we want to allow our society to be undermined by the use of social media among children and teenagers? They're being endangered in this way. Sorry, are they being endangered? Or are you being endangered? Your political career is in danger. This is just mad, right? And what's more mad is that, and I'm not making this up, he uses AI bots to trawl the internet, find the people who are insulting him, and file lawsuits against them. I'm not joking. There's hundreds of criminal complaints of online lawsuits. And some of these complaints, including comments calling him a little Nazi or a filthy drunk. I mean, God, why would they call you a Nazi, mate? Well, I can't imagine why they would be calling you a fucking Nazi. It's only because you really sound like one. Just FYI, this, if the Nazis had access to this kind of technology, they would have loved this, right? But this is, unironically, they are filing hundreds, or no, not even they. This guy is using AI, right? He's using the agency So Done, which scoured the internet for insults on behalf of clients, filed complaints, and pursued civil claims, financing itself by taking half of any damage awarded. So he is literally, and there are other journalists saying, look, we've basically automated this process, right? So this is using AI, an AI startup, to find people who call him a Nazi online after he's busy literally repressing them and sue them for it because the German laws have been set up in such a way that you're not even allowed to insult politicians. Going over to France, people who...
I mean, what the heck? The First Amendment is literally so that you can... I mean, that's what it's for. I mean, it's broadened out nowadays, but the whole idea of it was so that you could criticize those that were in power. You know, how would you keep anybody responsible and in, like, doing things the way that they need to be done, that you put them there to do if you weren't able to criticize them?
Interpreted this clip from Macron incorrectly, I think, because it seems that Macron is actually on the correct side of this position, because he says, well, listen to it, free speech is complete bullshit, but he's not saying the concept itself is complete bullshit. The problem is, the issue is that there are no firm lines drawn. Well, listen to it.
Because, I mean, free speech is a pure bullshit if nobody knows how you are guided through this so-called free speech, especially when it's to be guided from one hated speech to another hated speech. I just want to have a transparent road through these different speeches, and I want, by the way, to have a sort of public order. I want to avoid racist speech, hated speech, and so on.
So Macron shows us the liberal position is incoherent, right? It's clear that there is no way of properly delineating, transparently as he says, delineating what is hate speech and what is free speech. And the very notion of hate speech is obviously infringing on the concept of free speech. Now, he says, well, I don't want racist speech or anything like this. And I'm sure that he's correct. I'm sure he's telling you the truth. He doesn't want those things. But they're in contradiction with each other. There's a tension here. You can either have free speech or you can have regulated speech. And the Germans have chosen heavily regulated speech. And the thing is, the French are as well. I mean, this is just Macron being, again, a philosopher himself, because he has actually got qualifications in philosophy. He knows that there's a problem here. And the Germans are being, again, frankly, tyrannical. There's no great love of liberty in France, though, no matter what they say. Of course, you remember that the ex-officers in France were raided after the Grok bikini fiasco, which was way overplayed. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's gross that it was doing it, but like, you know, way overplayed. Not really. No one got hurt. Nothing actually indecent was generated. It was just inappropriate. But anyway, this was, gross. But this crackdown is clearly about the Americans and Elon, and not, protecting free speech or anything like that. And in response to this, the Americans are creating a portal to bypass content bans in Europe. Now, the thing is, that's all well and good, but they're going to make accessing the content itself the crime. And there are also, of course, there are plenty of categories where accessing certain kinds of content is a crime and should be. And they will just say, well, we'll just slide hate speech, racism, criticism of German politicians into the same category as CP. Right? We'll just slide that over into that. And then now you are the moral equivalents because they have just gone mental. Absolutely mental. Go and join Restore Britain, folks. Seriously, just come and join Restore Britain if you're in Britain. This is the only way we're getting out of this. And this is the future for us if we don't do something about it. This is the future. The fact that our government is as bad as it is now, it's just going to get worse. You know that Keir Starmer is going to make it worse. And they're all trying to move in the same direction here. Like, it's not a surprise that Keir Starmer's like, oh, we need to ban social media for 16s. It's like, okay, but you want them to vote as well. So where are they getting their information? Well, government-approved portals, obviously. Right, it's not a coincidence that they're all operating the same way because they're all the same kind of person. They'll agree on the same kind of thing. And in Britain, the only way we're getting out of this is via Restore.
Okay, so we're going to take a break. I've got one more video to go over, but before that, I did have another article. So I was going to have another just little break up between the videos of an article. Okay, American Renaissance. America is not a proposition nation by Charles Tallis. And so this was written in 2017. When I was studying French in school, we used an elementary reader that was published in France years ago. On one page, it had pictures of peoples of different nations with their corresponding names in French. These pictures were stereotypes: French, German, English, American, African, Chinese, and Egyptian, of the demographic reality that existed. Those people were their nations, and needless to say, each person representing a European country was white. What is a nation? It's not defined by political boundaries, but by its people. The Oxford dictionaries define a nation as a large aggregate of people united by common descent, history, culture, or language inhabiting a particular country or territory. Merriam-Webster's etymology emphasizes birth or common descent. Middle English from Anglo-French, from Latin nation, natio, birth, race, nation, from nasci, to be born, akin to Latin, to beget. What makes a nation propositional? Here are the standard definitions for proposition: something offered for consideration or acceptance, a theorem or problem to be demonstrated or performed. It's hardly encouraging to think of one's nation as something offered for consideration or a theorem or problem. As a practical matter, the contemporary meaning would be a nation defined by ideology or legal doctrine rather than by race, ancestry, religion, and culture. Look, I'm going to be real honest with you guys. If I can't get people to subscribe or like, YouTube will literally send aliens to my house. Do you want me to be probed? I need you to like and to subscribe. Thank you. A proposition nation, therefore, has none of the elements that traditionally are required for a people to be considered a nation, so the term is a contradiction. What attracts people to the idea of a propositional nation? It rejects the true meaning of nation: common blood, common descent, common culture. Whites, but only whites, believe that rejecting these things is enlightened, progressive, and virtuous. This is because they think, okay, so what they mean there by whites, but only whites, believe that rejecting these things is enlightened, progressive, or virtuous. What they mean by that is we are the only ones doing this. You would never go anywhere else, any other country. And then they say, hey, is this a propositional country? And that's built on just ideas and such and such. No, they would say, what are you talking about? You're crazy. We're a nation because we are Somalian, because we are Pakistani, because we are Indian, because we are Cherokee. Okay, like we're the only ones doing this, and therefore we're playing on a playing field where everybody else is using different rules. Rules that have existed since the beginning of time, and then we just come along and we're like, oh, we're just gonna like change everything, even though it doesn't comport to all of learned history. We're just going to be like, oh, a nation is just ideas. And like, I mean, it's literally insanity. We are being ruled by the insane asylum. Whites, but only whites, believe that rejecting these things is enlightened, progressive, and virtuous. This is because they think a nation, sense of blood and soil, leads to war and Nazism. So eliminating traditional nations is the only way to prevent war and atrocities. And that is what I have said. I don't even know who this is. This article is great. I have said that the reason why they are doing all these things, the reason why they are doing mass migration, the reason why they are doing away with sovereignty, the reason why they're doing all these ridiculous things is because they think that if you have nation states that have sovereignty, at any moment there's going to be another world war, and they put all these things in place and adopted all these weird mindsets from the trauma born out of the revolution over and over again, overthrowing monarchies, trying to bring the monarchies back. Then Napoleon happened. Then the world, then they, come together after the Napoleon thing happened, and they try to bring back the monarchies again. Then the French Revolution happened, and then the two world wars happened. So there were like trauma after trauma after trauma. And that's why they did all this crazy stuff that we're now living with today, because it's just gone off the rails, because they put too much centralization and bureaucrats over things who are just regular people who got infiltrated with really weird ideas and Marxism and stuff like that, which was probably already in there to begin with, because Marxism's been around for a long time. So that's what I'm talking about. Like, it was born out of trauma. I wrote about it on Substack. I will leave it in the description box, and I also made that video, which I'll put up here, about the liberal world order. So eliminating traditional nations is the only way to prevent war and atrocities. Again, this applies only to whites. There have been other proposition nations before anyone referred to the United States as one. Communist countries were supposed to put class solidarity above nation. They never really succeeded. So what they're saying there is that the Soviet Union and other communist countries were propositional nations by definition. When the Soviet Union was in a death struggle with Germany, Stalin put aside Marxist doctrine and called on Russians to join in what he called the Great Patriotic War. It was a war for Russia, not Marxism. What could be called the first propositional nation was founded with no expectation that the proposition would appeal to non-Europeans. The French Revolution produced the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, along with the famous motto, Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité. These were promoted as universal values, but this did not stop Charles de Gaulle, a century and a half later, from pointing out that the French are, after all, and above all, a European people of the white race with a Greek and Latin culture and the Christian religion. France continues to make a pretense of ignoring race and ethnicity, but this concept of domestic universalism was challenged with the arrival of non-European immigrants after the Second World War. Before then, immigrants had been mainly European and assimilated well. Immigrants from the Middle East and Africa have been much slower to assimilate and have high levels of social pathologies, and some have committed barbaric acts of terrorism. No proposition can hold together a nation with stark racial, ethnic, cultural, or religious differences. Such diverse nations are kept together with constant propaganda, ethnic bribery, coercion, and even force. This is true not just of the United States, but of Malaysia, Lebanon, and the former Yugoslavia. So the former Yugoslavia, the reason why they had all that breakout and all that stuff that happened during the Baltic Wars of the 1990s was because after the Soviet Union collapsed, they arbitrarily drew these lines for Yugoslavia that consisted of like 6 or 7 different ethnicities who then went nuts and started killing each other and declaring themselves independent states. Okay? History, 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 history. You have to know history. If you're just sitting around and you're just getting all this nonsense put into your head and you have nothing to base it off of because you don't know any history because it was never taught to you and nobody tells you about it, then you are just going to be living in this la la land and think that these ideas work. The former Yugoslavia, Sudan, and the Soviet Union. It is common to suggest that the United States was founded explicitly on a propositional nation, but this is false. What led to the revolution were such issues as representation, voting, taxation, tariffs. Americans were primarily from the British Isles, with a smattering of other European nationalities, and there was never any question that the United States was still tied to Great Britain. The Declaration and the results of the First Continental Congress of October 14th, 1774 had many references to the colonists' rights as Englishmen. Our ancestors who first settled these colonies were at the time of their immigration from the mother country entitled to all the rights, liberties, and immunities of free and natural-born subjects within the realm of England. The Declaration of Independence refers several times to our British brethren. Those who want to rewrite American history love to trot out Thomas Jefferson's phrase, all men are created equal. While completely ignoring the purpose of the Declaration, it is a detailed list of 28 grievances that justify separation from Britain. In this context, all men are created equal asserts that the colonists are equal to the British Crown and have the right to sever ties. Indeed, in his Declaration of Independence, an American, H.I. Mnekin writes the famous phrase, first me and you is as good as anybody else and may be a damn sight better. Jefferson and the signers are announcing that they are dealing with the king as equals, not suggesting that all human beings are biologically equal. As has often been pointed out, the Declaration itself does not treat American Indians as equals. He, the king, has excited domestic insurrections among us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. So, what they're talking about there is that, and I don't know, like maybe people don't know this. I don't know what anybody knows anymore. I really don't. So the British Crown was in alliance with some, not all, some of the Native American Indian tribes to be at war with the Americans. So some of the Indian tribes were working with Britain under a war alliance, okay? And then some Native Americans were in alliance with the French, and some Native Americans were in alliance with the Americans, and some were in no alliances. Some Indian tribes were aligned with each other. Some Indian tribes weren't aligned with the other Indians that were aligned with each other, and they went to war with each other brutally. It is also well known that the United States Naturalization Law of 1790, passed by the very first Congress, was explicit in its inegalitarian concept of American citizenship, which it limited to free white persons of good character. Indians, white indentured servants, slaves, free blacks, and later Asians were all excluded. In 1787, the second of the Federalist Papers, John Jay, gave thanks that Providence has been given to please this one connected country to one united people. Okay, so we already read that earlier. So, okay, Hillary Clinton believes in the proposition. American was an invention. It was an intellectual invention, and we have done pretty well for all these years. And these people who think America is a distinct people want to just undermine that very profound sense of who we are. For Miss Clinton, that very profound sense of who we are is a profound sense that anyone can be us, which is another way of saying we are nothing at all. Okay, so I will leave that also in the description. Let's go to the final video. Okay, and so in case anybody's thinking everyone's being super hyperbolic or woke right nonsense, let's have a look at what happened in South Africa and is still happening when the white people were demonized there.
My guest today was deported from Australia, detained in Africa. She was the planned victim of a thwarted terror attack. They were going to behead her. She almost won The Apprentice, and she's done all of it with a smile and snark that drives her critics out of their mind. She is irreverent. She, I think, is hilarious.
So this is the failed assassination of Katie Hopkins, the Glen Beck podcast. I don't really watch him that much, but I saw a clip of this and then I went and found the video and watched it. Like I said, I watch everybody. The guest is Katie Hopkins. If you guys don't know her, she's amazing. I will leave this video linked in the description as well.
She's never politically correct. She's from the other side of the pond, as they would say. TV star, political commentator, stand-up comedian, author, self-proclaimed biggest in Britain. This is a roller coaster. You are going to love Katie Hopkins. The most bizarre, I don't know, resume? I mean, I'll just start here. Okay. Here's an excerpt from your bio. Katie's lived her life in the crosshairs. She's banned from South Africa by the ANC, deported from Australia for criticizing lockdown, was the target of a jihadi plot to behead her. I found you interesting before I knew any of that. Let's just start with South Africa.
Let's start with South Africa.
Okay.
So I knew of the white farmers being butchered on their land by black gangs. And because I had such a big platform, a Mail Online columnist twice a week on Tucker when he was Fox, my own radio show, the point where I was the most noisy, people would often reach out and say, no one's hearing us. And the more I looked, the more I heard, and the more I wasn't happy with no one speaking.
Like no one.
No one. No, in fact, the opposite, of course, this is always the case, which is, oh, the Rainbow Nation. Oh, isn't it so great? And people going over to the polite parts to have a concert in age of supporting, I don't know what they thought, this massive multicultural glory pot that they pretend South Africa is, which it is not. And so I got funding. I raised funding. I got a cameraman. I got a security squad of proper, decent men. And I went out there and lived on the farms in South Africa for 3 months. And at night in South Africa, on white farms is where the monsters come. And it is a targeted campaign of wiping out white farmers with a level of butchery, which we won't talk about here, but it is at a level that is everything to do with revenge and vengeance.
Talk a little bit about it, because I don't think most Americans know. I mean, President Trump brought it up, and I couldn't believe how many Americans were like, what's happening?
Yes.
And it was immediately denied. Immediately denied.
And even now, they'll say, oh, that's obviously been discredited as a nonsense.
Right.
So 5 years ago, I was over there, and in the night, on white farms, gangs of black men armed with weapons that were laid down by whites during the time of apartheid. It's aided and abetted by black police forces. I have a black police officer on record saying he knows it's part of the police helping these gangs, and they come in, and what they do to farmers and their families. The police try and pocket this away as a burglary that went wrong, but we're talking about irons plugged in and the victims being burnt. I sat with a guy, and they used what do you call those machines where they put gas in and it you can melt metal with. They took one of those to him.
Yeah, a welding torch.
A welding torch. They took that to him. Another lady, they shot her husband in front of her and the children, and the child went to get her piggy bank, the give to the gang to ask them to leave her mummy to live. And the lady buried her husband and then gave birth to their first son the next day. I mean, the story is a lady whose face was blown off. She had it rebuilt. It's all there. It's all documented in my documentary, Homelands, or Plasmord, which means murder in place, murder of the farms. And the white crosses on the hillside represent each farmer that has been killed and butchered by these gangs. And it is terrifying, it is vengeful, and it is the biggest, strongest kept silence, because people have to pretend that South Africa is a success story. And I also spent time in the slums, white families, and I'm not saying it's not possible for white families to live that way, but white families, because they can't work because of this, if you own a business, you have to hand it over to the government. Land expropriation without compensation, which means we're taking your farm. And the thing that is never understood is, I don't care what color you are, you can understand that a farm doesn't farm itself. Trees that formerly were dripping with avocados and walnuts, if they just go onto those farms once they've expropriated them and they just pillage the roof off the farm building, pillage the tires from the tractor, pillage the metalwork out of machinery, then the farm disappears and collapses, which is why Zimbabwe is now it used to be the breadbasket and is now barren, because land doesn't farm itself.
Correct.
And so I spent a lot of time with those people. It changed me fundamentally and forever.
So if you guys are not aware, the Dutch, we're talking about the Dutch. So before even America was a country, etc., the Dutch settled in these places in South Africa and other places, and they, have been there since like the 1600s, and they have farms, etc.
And the biggest sort of the thing I carry with me in my heart is the big Boers of South Africa, these big, powerful white men who say we will die in our boots for the love of the land. And what was so interesting yesterday with Charlie was that Pete stood up there and said Charlie died in his boots. And so for me, so many threads of time are weaving themselves together. And I couldn't be more proud that 80 plus a million Americans voted in President Donald J. Trump, and that he has recognised, with the help of Elon Musk, recognised the South Africans' plight. And after 5 years of waiting, that was quite a moment for many of us.
But has anything happened?
No, it is. I could go there again and film the same thing again. They sleep. I mean, if I could show you and take you, you can watch the documentary. But so they have houses. So I slept in these homesteads. It's terrifying. And they've ripped out the ceilings. So there's rafters. They have ladders up to the rafters. They have slam doors from the kitchen to the bedroom, so that if they are attacked, the children know they get up those ladders and get into the rafters. They have their guns in the rafters so that the father or the mother can try and protect the kids and shoot downwards in their own homes. I had a young son when I went, and he's older now, but he used to think monsters would come at night. Mum, there's a boogeyman under my bed. But in South Africa at night is when the monsters come. And it is a very frightening place.
It seems to me to be the same kind of philosophy that we're dealing with here in America with social justice. There is no forgiveness. It is, you did this, your parents, grandparents, in our case, great-great-great-great-grandparents, so you can never be forgiven, and we're taking it from you, and we want you to know exactly.
Not mine. My family, that's the other thing, like, very few people owned slaves. Okay, it wasn't like the whole population. My family never did. Nobody was about that. We were extremely poor, lived in like the Appalachian Mountains.
What it was like, as if in America, as if these people had any clue. It's just hate and vengeance.
Vengeance. And also, so, like for you guys, reparations, or David Lammy in the UK wants to pay reparations from white people who've never owned a slave to black people who've never been a slave.
You stopped slavery.
That's not good enough now. But the other unspoken truth that I obviously sat with so many of the black farm workers as well, of course, they have been with their white farms for generations. Their great-grandparents worked the farm, and now they work the farm. It's a safe and stable and secure partnership that they share. The kids' nannies are now, they are all in together. It works. It's not an apartheid thing. It's just a system of working the land. And now those poor black farm hands and farm workers who share the toil, they don't have work either, which is classic of how this works. If you take the George Floyd stuff in Minneapolis, I went in amongst the George Floyd mob when they took over that cross-section at the gas station. I pretended to be one of them. They burnt down everything that poor black people need to be able to function. They burnt down the cup store or whatever it's called. They burnt down the fuel station. They burnt down everything black people need, because their need for vengeance was greater than their love of their brother.
Okay, so we got to get to the part where you get kicked out of South Africa.
Yeah. Well, it actually happened. I went in securely and secretly, as you would if you're me. Started releasing immediately, but I delayed a month. So I'd already been there a month, and I started to release the truth of the land because I was determined it to be heard. But of course, then the ANC picked up that I was in country. So they were behind me, kind of chasing me as I went to find the stories and tell the stories of these men and women slaughtered. So that by the time I went back to the airport, the ANC had caught up with me. They changed my passport details. And at the airport, when I handed my passport in to try and leave, it beeped. And I knew. And my security detail that was with me knew. And they took my passport. So my security detail radioed to the lads who were all in the van, still in the car park to me. And he told them to be armed and ready, so that if the South African police took me, they would open fire on the South African police, because if I go to a South African police jail, I'm not coming out of there. But as it turned out, classic South Africa, it was a Sunday. And on Sunday, the police chief wasn't in work. So eventually I got my passport back, my security detail got me on the plane, and not until they were wheels up was I allowed to relax or stop. He still had his hand on the back of my cuff as we took off. And I have no regrets or no concerns for that. But that is the level they will go to stop this being told. And they're very successful because there is a receptive audience of Democrats who prefer to look the other way.
Okay, so
that was South Africa.
So then you're in Australia and you're doing the
Okay, so that was just a little bit. It obviously goes way more in depth than that. It's really gruesome if you've never looked into what's going on there. It's pretty horrific. Maybe we will do a show on that. I do have a couple saved videos of people in South Africa on podcasts talking, and the whole country. I mean, it's such a mess because it's a socialist takeover, and it's unbelievable what's going on there. But that was all I had for this video on the propositional nation. I hope you guys found it informative. Please leave your comments in the comment section and tell me what you think. Tell me if you like my picture that I made for my screen until I can figure out this whole recording thing. And I would really, really appreciate it if you could subscribe. That would mean a lot to me. Honestly, it would mean very, very much to me. Well, that's the end of that video, and I'll see you next time on The Eclectic Journalist.